How should we think about the way that networks, such as social media, could be used to help somebody develop their career? Well, this is what this diagram is all about. This is a model that I have come up with to help discuss and to help support students in thinking the way that networks, such as social media, could be used in the area of career development. You should see this as a bit like a process that tries to discuss what happens before somebody approaches a network, whilst in a network, and how they make use of the capital developed in that network to further develop their career. So firstly, we have this blob that discusses what happens before the network in terms of somebody's career development needs. This is trying to describe the fact that before you go anywhere near a network, you are an individual with a set of desires, a set of goals, with a concept of yourself, and a view of where you'd like to be going in the world. You have a set of career development needs. This is set outside of the network. So this is about you and the core of your identity before you go anywhere near the network. Then you have the network itself. So the network is discussed as a enclosed space. That is that what happens in the network stays inside the network. And the network is an enclosed space in that way. And when we step into a network, there are a number of activities that we should consider as part of developing our career. The first of these is curating. So when we step into a network, like social media, the first thing we do is we think about how we are going to present ourselves in that network and how we're going to manage what opinions people may already have of us. So in social media, this is to do with managing your digital footprint. It's to do with putting out content that represents your identity. It's beginning to think about who you want to be in that space. Next, having considered curating, there is connecting. So networks are about people, they're about forming relationships. So connecting are our efforts to connect with new people and to gain certain status and certain position in the new relationships that we form. Finally, there is learning. So learning is about what we gain from those other people, the opportunities to access new information, to get new ideas about how we should behave, to become more aware of opportunities. It's the impact on our understanding that interacting in the network creates. As you can see, all of the arrows go two-way. So all of the activities inform all of the other activities. So the identity we put across that affects who we will or won't be able to connect with, and the standard and the status that we have in those relationships. And also our identity focuses on the sort of learning that will be particularly useful to us. Similarly, forming connections will in some way affect our identity, who we are in the network, and it will change our ability to learn. And as we undertake learning, that will in turn encourage us to connect with certain people as we see what our needs are, and that learning will also inform how we'd want to represent our identity on the network. So that's showing that everything goes in two directions. All of that should develop a certain status, a certain standing, a certain set of capital on the network. The problem in networks is that they tend to enclose capital. So what we develop in the network tends to stay on the network. This is where this last idea of leveraging comes into play. So leveraging is about discussing how we make use of what we develop in the network in the real world. So I sometimes talk about what I call the Narnia effect with students or with clients I'm working with. The Narnia effect is discussed as something that happens in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. The four children go into Narnia. They spend years and years and years in Narnia. They actually grow up in Narnia and become very old, and then they travel back into the real world, into 1940s England, and everything is as it was before they left. Nothing has actually changed. Social media can be a bit like that. We can be involved in lots of activity. We can spend a lot of time developing our profile. We can build up lots of relationships. We can even access lots of information. But it doesn't necessarily affect the real world in which our the majority of our careers exist. It's not easy to transfer capital from one network to another network. And in some ways, that's particularly difficult with digital social media because you've got to move from digital to non-digital. Leveraging is about having a set of skills that allows us to make use of that capital. So it takes relationships that we form online and moves them offline, where we can maybe grow them and develop them more, create a more sense of trust and a more sense of belonging, share physical space with people. It takes the learning and makes it real in terms of not just what we read online, but in terms of our experiences of the real world, or in terms of us customizing things and personalizing things through our experience and through our desires. It's the identity we create online and looks at how that would be the start of a new identity for us in the real world. So it's about taking what's developed online, offline, and making use of it, making it useful. That things that happen in the network won't intrinsically be useful, but we need to think about how we're going to leverage them and make them useful for us in the real world. So again, you see that though we start with career development and end with leveraging, that everything goes in two directions. So as we leverage, that moves back into the network and encourages us to behave different ways in the network. And as we develop things in the network, that maybe highlights career development needs or changes who we are in some way and gives us new career development needs. So it should all be a fluid process. So to sum up, this is a developmental model starting with our career development needs, and moving forward to leveraging in terms of making use of the capital we've developed in the network to move our career on. It particularly discusses the network as enclosed space, as a set of things that happen inside the network and don't necessarily move off the network. And but it's multi-dimensional, looking at how all of the facets relate to all of the other facets. Hope you find this interesting.